Hi again, everybody. Thank you for watching the next video in the series here. It's January 31st. We've now gone over what these MPDs represent, as well as the general idea of why people are looking at them. And what I would like to do now is explain a little bit more about what we're seeing on these charts in a component by component manner. So what you're seeing is occasionally you're seeing these red or light pink lines in the background. So here's one, here's another one on the NASDAQ. Over here on the Russell, there's a blue one coming up. I'd like to explain what those are, how they're relevant, and how we created that kind of notification, because this is something, again, you can apply using your own analysis with whatever conditions you care about. All right. Now, a while back, I made a series of videos on something called the Value Area Breach Project. And basically what it was is this idea that if the market is breaking lower through its value area low, which I'll explain in what that is in a second, and at the same time, in the same bar, the CCI is breaking this negative 200 level, that is a condition that does not sustain for very long. And the idea is that a lot of times you get a retracement off that. So it fit very nicely into this whole counter trend idea that I tend to have. But what I found was when extreme volatility would hit, that this did not prove to be as effective. And I would see these levels just get blown right through. And just like many other indicators were getting blown right through. So what I'm going to do now is flip over to another chart book that only has this stuff on it, and we can look a little closer. This is the one here called 131.19 value area breach sample. So you see the same sort of blue line behavior we saw in the Russell on the other screen just a moment ago. So this is a study here called volume value area lines. Okay, that's the green and the red dashed lines. And then the CCI is down here. And then the only other studies up here are the ones that are generating the color background behavior, which I'll explain how to do. All right. But first, the CCI, relatively simple. It's got a 200 line, a negative 200 line. The 200 and the negative 200 are what would be considered extreme levels. The idea here is that if the market breaks through if the CCI goes below negative 200, that is usually not a condition that is sustained for very long. Similarly, if it goes above positive 200, it's usually not sustained for all that long. Now, does that mean the market turns around when the CCI turns around? Not always. That's the tricky part, is that in a more boring market, a lot of times you do see this oscillator start to turn and the market turn with it. But when we were seeing these extreme volatile moves, these levels were just getting ripped right through. So this is not something that I find particularly relevant as I'm looking at the chart currently based on the current volatility. But remember, coming up with these strategies and maintaining them is all about being nimble. These conditions change all the time. For me, it's now something that I look at as more of a confirmer. Okay, it's not something that stands on its own 2 feet right now. There might be a time, a month from now or 2 months or 6 months from now where it does. Okay, and that would be great. But at this point, I'm using it more as a confirming indicator. So if we were to see another potential, let's say, buy signal and right in the same neighborhood, maybe within a few minutes, we're getting one of these signals as well, that might be a stronger justification for a long, for example. Okay, so let's go through what is happening here and how to create something that resembles what you see here today. All right, the first thing is the volume value area line study. Notice how it's curvy and it's going all over the place. That's because it's showing the value area as the value area is right now. The value area means 70% of the volume traded in this session has been between these two prices. So as the market breaks lower, if it continues to break lower here and it trades on heavy volume, you're going to see this value area line drop. And you'll see this value area high line drop down. Okay, so this is kind of like a quasi-established range. Usually what happens is when the market breaks out of its value area, that is something to take note of at the very least. All right, it could generate, it could be a confirmation for something else. It could be a sign to stay away. It could be a sign to get in, just depending on the circumstances. But usually it means that a new range is being established. This is especially important at a time like right now. It's 2:20 in the afternoon at this moment. When the value area is breached late in the day, that means a lot of volume has to have traded for the value area to be going lower. And so we might just if this red dotted line starts to turn lower here, that might mean that there's heavy volume being traded and that the value area is being shifted downward. So what happens often is if the market is ripping lower, comes through that value area low, the CCI goes lower, hits that or goes through that negative 200 level, that's the idea that, okay, this might not last very long. Let's look for an opportunity to get long. Okay, that's the very basic viewpoint of it. Now, I'd like to focus, because this is not incredibly relevant to what I'm doing right now, and it's more of a confirming indicator. I'd like to focus on the mechanics of how to get something like this color background to work, because it's a really neat part of Sierra, one of the coolest parts in my opinion, and anybody can do this. This takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of understanding of some very basic syntax. I'm going to call it sort of Excel based, greater than, less than, cross from above, cross from below, you know, H for high, L for low, C for current or close, O for open, very basic stuff that anybody can learn. There's no actual programming involved. All right, but if I wanted to be notified when this condition was occurring, meaning that value area low is being breached and at the same time the CCI is going below negative 200, how do we do that? Well, the first thing that you want to start to understand is that every indicator has subgraphs, and the subgraphs can be referred to create these sorts of conditions. The way that you identify the study number and the subgraph number is to look at the ID number in front of the in front of the study name. You can also go up here and see it at the top of the window. Okay, in the subgraphs tab, you're going to see the pieces that make up the study, and you're going to see an ID number at the top that's constant. So in this example, the CCI is going to be ID1, and then you can see that the CCI itself is SG1. That stands for subgraph 1. And then the lines that are displayed, this line 2 here is hidden. This line, which is the upper line here, is subgraph number 3, and this line, which is the lower line here, is subgraph number 4. So, and this is why I use Notepad a lot for this when I'm trying to keep track of things. So what I would do here is say, okay, for the CCI, that's going to be ID1.SG1. The upper line is going to be ID1.SG3. And then the lower line is going to be, okay, here we go, ID1.SG4. So when we refer to the CCI, we're going to be using those values. So sometimes I keep these handy so I don't have to go back and look. So a lot of times I'll write them down or put them in Notepad. All right, so those are the relevant parts of the CCI we care about, because we're going to be caring about when the CCI is below or above this level. Then let's go over to the volume value area line study. Okay, this one has 3 subgraphs. There's the point of control, which I actually have hidden. It's not visible. Then there's the value area high and the value area low. Notice the ID number is study ID number 2. You can use the ID colon 2 if you want. You don't have to though, so I usually skip it. So for the value area high, we're going to do ID2.SG2. Excuse me, that's going to be VAH, value area high. And then for the value area low, VAL, that's going to be ID2.SG3. Okay, so these are the pieces of the study that we're going to be referring to. All right, now how do we actually go about creating the condition? Well, that's where this study called color background based on alert condition comes in. So this is actually added to this chart 2 times. I did a short name B for buy and another one S for sell. And what you're going to do is add the study first. So you're going to add the color background based on alert condition study, which is in the list, just like any other study. It's right here, color background based on alert condition. And in the settings section, you're going to pick, in the subgraphs tab, you're going to pick the color. So this is clearly our buy signal, all right? And you really don't have to mess with any of these inputs here. You can leave them all there. It's the alert tab that you're going to care about the most, because we actually have to input the condition. What is the condition that we care about here? And so this is where it comes into play the necessity for whoever's doing this to learn a little bit about how Sierra accepts these alerts. Now, don't be scared when you look at this the first time. Nobody just sits there and types these out with their eyes closed like some hacker in a movie, okay? This is usually done piece by piece, and that's how I do it, all right? So I'm going to demonstrate to you how I might think this through. Like if I were just doing this myself, what would I be, how would I go through the process of doing this? Well, the first thing I would think is I'd say, all right, what's the first thing that I really care about? The first is, what's the most obvious, is that the CCI needs to be below negative 200. So what is our operator for the CCI? Okay, it's id1.sg1, right? So I'm just going to copy that. So I have id1.sg1. All right, now what does it need to be below? Well, it needs to be below the lower line, which is what? id1.sg4. So the first condition that I'm looking for is id1.sg1 is less than id1.sg4. So if I were saying this in English, so to speak, it would be the CCI is less than the lower line, or line number 2. All right, that's the first condition. Simple as that. All right. The next condition is slightly more complicated, but also very logical. Okay. Is the condition just that the market is below the value area low? No, it is not that it's below the value area low. It is that it's crossing over the value area low. That's the key, is that it's really important. There's a big difference between the market just being below the value area low, which it could be below a lot of the time. But what I specifically care about is when the market is above the value area low and it goes down through it and it is now below it. It is effectively crossed it. If you are going to be using a condition where it's that specific, you need to use the operator cross from above. Okay, if you just use, one is less than the other, you're going to get too many signals because there's going to be too many times where that's the truth. That's not really what we care about. We're looking for that violent move lower and then the rebound, which is actually kind of happening right now. All right, you can see here. So how does that condition actually print? Well, you're going to use the operator cross from above, and then you put in open parentheses. And what you're doing is you're going to use the letter C for the price, and that means the closing or current price. So whenever you do a cross from above or cross from below type language, what you're looking for is you're looking for the first thing in the parentheses to cross the second thing. All right, so cross from above is going to be, okay, we want the current price or the closing price of a bar if we're looking back in history. The current price of the bar is crossing, what are they crossing? Well, okay, hang on a second. We're on the lower end of the value area. So we want to know when the value area low is being breached. So we conveniently wrote that down. So this is our second condition. First condition, CCI is below negative 200. Second condition, the price is crossing the value area low from above. That's it. Those are the two conditions. So how do we put this into the charting program in a way it can understand? Just put these next to each other, separated by a comma, and then put the whole thing in a giant parentheses with the word "and" in front of it. When you do this, that means that everything in the parentheses must be true. Not one of the conditions, not one of the 5 or 6 conditions you might have in here, but everything inside the parentheses must be true in order for the condition to be valid. There are situations where you could use an OR operator at the beginning. This is not one of those because we want both of these things to be true in the same bar. If you use an OR operator, that might mean that any of the things inside the parentheses can be true and therefore the condition is true. But that's not what we're doing here today. All right, so this to me is a very good example of how somebody can put together basically their own indicator. You could take the pieces of the study that are most relevant to you. You could actually hide the stuff you don't care about. If I don't really need to look at the CCI all day, if I just really want to know when this condition is true, why do I look at the CCI? I'm not making analysis, decisions based on the CCI. It's just frying my brain. So all I'd have to do is hide the volume value area lines if I don't care about them either. Hide the CCI, push apply. Okay, these charts are all linked by study, so they all go away for me. And now I just get the condition. It's just a cleaner chart. I don't have to look at all that other stuff. Maybe I got a couple other conditions I'm looking for too. That's enough clutter. So this is a very good, in my opinion, a very good example of how the color background studies can be used. And it doesn't just have to be 2 conditions. It might be 3, 4, 5, 6 conditions. You might have a very specific set of setups that when all of them are coming together at once, that's where your edge is. Then that's what you would want to do. All right, we can help you with this. Okay, so if you have a series of conditions that you're looking for and you can logically define them, then employ us to help you, try to build something. It's a good challenge for us. It's how we learn how to use the program too. All right, it's by answering emails and questions about how to do this, how to do that. That's how we became proficient at the software. All right, it's how you're going to become proficient, is asking questions and getting answers. There's a lot of good documentation on Sierra's website. They have the operators all listed there. We can put the link in the YouTube description for you, no problem. We will. But we're happy to help as well. All right. Now, let's just flip back over to the main window here in a second, and we can see this is how this looks in the context of the bigger study. So this market has come down through the value area low, which is this red dotted line, dash line. It is nowhere near the lower MPD or the mid-level MPD or the lower MPD. To me, this is probably something I would have avoided. All right, unfortunately, because it turns out to be, it looks like it's a great potential trade. But this is not an extended enough move for someone with my risk tolerance, in theory, to take. Now, someone else with a greater account size or a more risk tolerance might be more apt to take a trade like this. Okay, but usually, if it were me, hypothetically speaking, if I saw the same blue bar and we were closer to this area, and the market had made more of like a violent move lower, that would probably be a situation where I'd be more apt to take that position. Okay, so hopefully you find that useful. We're going to move on to another component of the chart setup here in the next video. We appreciate your time. Please send us your questions, comments, and ideas. Thank you for watching.